Today, we're going to be turning Minecraft into the ultimate cinematic experience. We'll be using a variety of mods, shaders, resource packs, and settings in order to achieve the desired result. And I'm going to be leaning into this pretty hard, so there may be a few settings you'd prefer not to be enabled, but too bad. This is what you're here for, and you better like it. Now, first things first, we need to get away from that default uncinematic aspect ratio that is 16:9. I want to give this video that nice theatrical look, so I'll be recording the entirety of this video at 21:9. I'm sure most of you watching this are using a 16:9 aspect ratio screen, and this includes me, by the way, but you'll still absolutely see the benefits of this. If you're among the few out there that actually have a screen dedicated to this format, then congratulations, this one's for you. This aspect ratio is overall just much closer to what you'd see in film, giving it a much wider field of view, and I must say, the results are quite dramatic. Also, I found that when playing with this resolution, I don't actually feel the need to raise my FOV from standard. In fact, doing so stretches the edges of your screen pretty egregiously, and lower FOVs in general are just more cinematic, so it's a win-win here. If you have a 16:9 aspect ratio monitor and would like to use this aspect ratio yourself, you'll likely need to play in windowed mode, find your monitor's max resolution, and lower the vertical resolution. I'll quickly show you an easy way to do this. On this website, which I'll link in the description below, I simply changed the aspect ratio to 21:9, locked it, and reset the horizontal resolution. Whatever numbers you end up with here are what you should be able to use. Personally, I have a 4K monitor, so I can go a fair bit higher than this. I decided to record at 1440p ultra-wide. Technically, I could go a little larger, but this is a pretty common resolution at this aspect ratio. So, find what works best for you within your monitor's limitations and go from there. Now, next, we're going to be overhauling terrain generation. Vanilla's is pretty decent, but for our purposes today, we need, large mountains and expansive views, that kind of thing. And there's a couple terrain generation mods I'll recommend here. The first two, which I'll primarily be focusing on, are Tectonic and Larion. Each will completely overhaul terrain generation in their own way. Tectonic features long, smooth mountain ranges amidst expansive plains, while Larion presents large, rugged mountains and far less flat areas. Side by side, they're quite distinct, so you'll want to pick one or the other. Obviously, this largely comes down to your own preference, but overall, they'll both make your terrain very nice to look at. Anyway, with the terrain now improved, we still need to make biomes more cinematic, as neither of these mods will actually make changes to biomes. So to fix this problem, you'll want to combine your terrain generation mod of choice with Wyther's Overhauled Overworld. This mod substantially enhances biomes, and combined with either Tectonic or Larion, pretty much anywhere you explore will be improved significantly. Also, if you'd like to add a little more detail to your world, you can always install countered terrain slabs. It'll add further detail to terrain by inserting slabs between naturally generated blocks, both on the surface and underground. And with all these mods installed, we now have a fantastic frame to build upon. Next, we'll obviously want to install distant horizons in order to take full advantage of this enhanced terrain. As I said before, I want expansive views, and distant horizons provides that. Within the menus of this mod, I've set LOD render distance to 200, which should be more than enough. Plus, within the graphic settings, I set LOD drop-off distance to high, along with vertical quality. These settings will help the distant terrain really blend in, and you can always start with these settings and see how it runs, and adjust according to your game's performance. Try to find that sweet spot where, you think it looks nice, and it's also running pretty well. Of course, this video would be incomplete without a shader, and there's plenty of shaders available for Minecraft one would call cinematic, but for the purposes of today's video, I've once again narrowed it down to two I'll primarily use. These two shaders are Complementary and Photon, and just like the world generation mods, these two shaders have completely unique identities. What they do have in common is a large number of features I'm gonna take advantage of. And I tweaked a lot of settings within these shaders, enough that I'm gonna include some links in the description you can copy if you'd like to use my exact settings. I'll briefly touch on some of the most important ones though. Starting with Complementary, I've gone with the Unbound preset this time around. I just feel it fits the overall theme of this video a bit more. I've enabled depth of field along with chromatic blur. Depth of field is like one of the most cinematic settings shaders have, so obviously it'll be enabled. I'm also gonna commit the crime of enabling motion blur. Most people don't willingly play with this setting, including me, but it is kinda cinematic, so we'll give it a chance. You can adjust the strength of motion blur at least, so if you want it to be more subtle, you can do that. I enabled cloud shadows, definitely cinematic, along with some other settings I'll mention in just a minute. As I said, Photon is the other shader I've included. The settings I made changes to in Complementary, I've also adjusted here, plus I played with things like fog density for different biomes and such. Now, if I went overly in depth for these settings, this particular section of the video would be a little too long, so again, if you'd like to make your shaders look exactly like mine, I'll leave those links in the description. We'll also want to install some resource packs, each with their own purpose. For starters, I've selected Vanilla Mashup, and this pack has a hybrid of multiple resource packs incorporating some great features from them. It has the PBR textures from SPBR, connected textures from Stay True, reworked sound effects thanks to Reimagined, and much more. I was a little hesitant to use this pack. As I said, it's simply a mix of other resource packs, and I wasn't entirely sure if this is allowed, but it has been on Modrinth for close to a year and has a solid download count, so I believe it's good to go. If you'd like, you can always install some of the packs it's built upon separately, but Vanilla Mashup does mix some of these elements together very well. I am, however, still running SPBR along with this pack with a lower priority, as it provides reflective textures to tools in hand. This particular feature doesn't seem to actually be included with Vanilla Mashup, and I quite like it. And by the way, in order to get these reflective textures to work, you'll need to make sure Lab PBR is enabled within the settings of your selected shader. Complementary actually has its own built-in reflective textures, but that default setting won't work right with a separate resource pack, so be sure to make that change. I figured I should also include a nice foliage enhancing resource pack, and I decided to go with a pack that's quickly grown into one of my favorites. This would be Dronko's Alternative Bushy Leaves. This resource pack looks nothing like most of the other enhanced leaves packs available, and what it does really well is introduce a degree of randomness and unpredictability to trees. Makes them much less uniform, and I really appreciate how this looks. At first I thought it looked a bit strange, and to some degree I still do, but as I gave it some time, it really grew on me. So perhaps it's just an acquired taste. There's one other resource pack I know of that provides a similar look to this one, called Cubic Leaves. Pretty similar, but do yield different results. They're both great, and I figured I'd provide it as another option. If this style doesn't work for you though, there's many other fancy leaf resource packs available. You really can't go wrong here. And finally, I'll once again be including fresh animations. It's kind of a must for a video like this. We gotta have some nice cinematic mobs for our cinematic world, Keep in mind, with most of these resource packs, you'll need to install some additional mods for them to work correctly. This includes mods like continuity, along with entity model features and textures. And by the way, quick side note, I don't know if you've noticed, while using Photon shaders, if you walk through plants, you'll actually trample them a little bit. And I think this looks really cool. Just thought I'd point it out. So, moving on from resource packs for now, we'll want to install Camera Overhaul. It provides several cinematic features, such as having the camera tilt and shift with different motions. By default, the settings within this mod are a little tame, and for the sake of this video, I'm gonna turn them up a bit. There's also a setting within this mod that makes it so if you idle for about a second, your camera starts to sway a little bit. Very cinematic if you ask me. Cinematic enough that I'd like this to be more prevalent without delay, so I just removed the delay entirely. I'll also be installing a Camera Utils. Normally I use this mod for improving third person, as it allows you to set multiple customized third person perspectives, but for this video, I'm not really playing in third person. It's much more first person focused. So I'm mainly installing this mod for the ability to customize the cinematic camera. Normally, the cinematic camera within Minecraft just isn't something you can realistically play with, but with this mod, you can adjust the strength of this effect. So set it to say 80% and you'll get some nice smoothed out camera movements while still remaining playable. I'm including AutoHUD as well. HUD is not cinematic at all, so we should have it disabled whenever it isn't really needed. And this mod will handle that for us. You'll still have it when you want it, otherwise it's gone. Another thing I really wanted to disable is the selection box. The selection box is anything but cinematic. It's especially bad when walking through tall foliage and can get pretty difficult to ignore. You can always press F1, but that's not really all that convenient and really only good for screenshots. Adventure mode also removes the selection box, but then of course you can't interact with much. I tried to find a mod that could easily disable it, but struggled to find exactly what I was looking for, but then I realized the answer was always right in front of me. Both of the shaders I'm using have an option to simply disable it. Really doesn't get easier than that. Complementary's option is particularly nice, as you can have it dynamically turn on and off if you wish. So if you have nothing in hand, the selection box won't show itself. Holding a block or a tool, however, will reveal it. Really, this is a small but important feature in my opinion. It goes a long way towards improving the experience here. I've also installed the Hold My Items mod. It'll make it so your hand is always visible when using pretty much anything, and whatever you're holding will be lifted a bit higher on your screen so you can see more of it. This looks great, especially with our now reflective blocks and tools. Lets you really appreciate them, I figured we should also enhance the soundscape Overworld. Visuals aren't the only thing that's cinematic, so naturally we'll include AmbientSounds. This mod is arguably the best AmbientSounds mod available for Minecraft, and really does some heavy lifting when it comes to making your world feel more alive. Naturally, we'll also install Presence Footsteps. It's been the best footstep sound overhaul available for Minecraft for at least like a decade, and continues to be a must-include mod for me. I will say, with both AmbientSounds and Presence Footsteps, you should probably turn down their respective sound levels a little bit, otherwise they're both just a little too loud in my opinion. Now, the next few things I'll be installing will be focusing on making rain and weather more cinematic. For starters, you'll want Particle Rain. It provides a multitude of visually impressive weather overhauling effects. Rain falls at an angle and is less visually repetitive. Same goes for snow. Deserts will have sandstorms, and fog can appear near sea level. So a great starting point for making weather more cinematic, and in addition to this, we will once again add a few more resource packs. First, Unobstructive Weather. This resource pack turns raindrops into a single pixel rather than streak-shaped. It makes rain more subtle and very nice to look at. And by the way, I'll throw a quick curveball here. BSL looks really, really good with this weather. Good enough that I'll include it as an additional third recommended shader for this video. It's a late addition, but I feel this is where it does its best work. Additionally, I've installed the gentler weather sounds resource pack, which will replace the default white noise style Minecraft rain audio with one that's just more pleasant on the ears. And once you've got all these combined, I do believe weather has been pretty significantly upgraded. Now, approaching the end, I'll be installing just a few more mods that add some nice new visual effects. First, Falling Leaves, which does exactly what it says it will, makes forests a bit nicer, along with particle interactions, which adds new particle effects to many areas of your world. At this point, Minecraft should feel significantly more cinematic. Hopefully, pretty much everything should be very nice to look at and listen to. I feel I did a pretty solid job with this, but obviously you can always install more, so let me know what else you would add and maybe I'll do it in a future video. Anyway, you can find everything I used in the description, including the shader settings, and hopefully you enjoyed the video. If you did, be sure to leave a like and subscribe, and until next time, thanks for watching.